Hey everyone, it's Mike from WordPress.com. Right now we're looking at full site editing, and one of the things I wanted to dive into is how to change things on a more granular level, going between your style settings and your global styles overall and your kind of block level settings. So right now I have the index page template open from our navigation in here with that WordPress button like we talked about before. So I would go into templates, I would select index, and that's going to take me back to where we started. What I think is easiest to look at in this case when you're changing kind of details on how things look is this query block right here. So I'm going to open this outline just to show you what I'm talking about. If we scroll down a little bit, what you're going to see is we have query loop, and within the query loop you're going to see the post templates, you're going to see the post title, the post featured image, and the post excerpt. And so these are multiple blocks that you can edit on a really granular level within this query loop block. And that's going to change how they all look within that container, because that's basically a pattern that's repeated here. So the first thing I want to show you is there's actually not a lot of options in styles, which again is under here, for this block specifically. So if I go into query loop or any of those other elements, so let's say I look at, let's say post excerpt specifically. I can change the type, but the layout option is not going to give me more than just padding and margin. And so when you're trying to change something like your post thumbnail, post featured image as it's called, you really don't have a lot of options to do anything here. But that doesn't mean you can't change how everything looks there and really have control of it. So when we go into this section again, I'm going to just focus on that featured image, and we're going to play around with what we can do. So I'm actually going to close the styles editor. Right now you're going to see the standard kind of Gutenberg settings bar that pops up on that block. I'm also going to click on show more settings here, and that's going to give me this bar on the side. So with this block we can play with a few things. One of my favorites is this Duotone filter. So let's say I want to set something custom. I'm going to use yellow for the highlights, and maybe I'm actually going to use, or for the shadows, and I'm going to use maybe black. Maybe black. That looks weird, but it's kind of cool and unique. So what I want you to notice is that all the thumbnails were changing. I just cleared that out. So if I go back and I choose any of these, let's do blue and black, for example, those colors are applied across all the thumbnails or the post featured image previews that show up within this block. You can also change your aspect ratio, which probably break it if we change some of these things. And you can play around with the different settings. So if I wanted them to be taller, I could try to play with that. It's going to give me a little more space. Right now they're all square with 300 and 300 instead of that slightly offset square that I had before. You can also change if they're contained to the shape of the actual photo, if they're filling that space, or if they're stretched to kind of fill that space specifically. The cover version I like best because it kind of crops the image to fit the space without making it look kind of distorted or weird. So that's kind of a nice way to actually play around with styling on all these things. You can really do the same with, say, your post title. Now we've got that blue. If I wanted to change the typography or the colors on this, I could make it the blue specifically. I don't know if that's quite the same one. I guess those are links, so we have to do that. And then they would match. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to save any of these changes, but you can just see that we're playing around and we have a lot more options on the block level settings. And so I save that, and that changes how it looks for this entire section of the site in this specific template. So if you can't find what you're wanting to change in the styles editor, remember that you can go back and change those block settings for this page, and that's going to stay true whenever you're using this template.